How hard is it to walk that fine line for a Democratic candidate?
We're seeing presidential candidate Harris address the big elephant in the room. I think immigration is always been a top issue for voters, and the election is just a month and a day away. Sorry, it's a few weeks away. And so it makes sense. It makes sense for her to go to be proactive, tackle the issue head on, and propose some ideas. I think going beyond the rhetoric, Democrats and Republicans, policy-wise, I think we've seen some convergence post-pandemic. Post-COVID, when Title 42 entered into force, when the border was closed for a few days, we're now seeing more and more similarities. And I think that this message that we want to fix the immigration system, that it's broken, is something that anybody, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, can agree on.
What are some of the policy specifics that you're hoping to hear from Harris? What are the kinds of messages that resonate with voters?
Well, she's in Arizona, where former President Trump is ahead of her, I think, by 3 points. So expect a harsher tone, perhaps not as harsh as when she was in Guatemala back in 2021 and was blatantly telling migrants do not come to the United States. But we'll see her be tougher and have a stance on that the border must be secured that we haven't heard so far. Since 2021, she's been really focused on addressing the root causes of migration, and I think that she'll tone that down a little bit, focus more on the domestic issues. But yeah, I think that we're going to see the rhetoric heat up in the last weeks of the campaign.
Well, as you allude back to her visit to Guatemala, Maria, it is putting focus on the notion that she was part of this administration put in charge of focusing on the root causes of migration over the U.S. border. Where does that whole root causes conversation, the situation in these countries from which people are fleeing, have here? Is there a role for it, or are we just not in that moment in American politics where that's a message that is received?
I think immigration right now is going to be really a domestic issue. There's no appetite to hear about how taxpayer dollars could help alleviate some of the conditions in these countries that are pushing people away. When we think about immigration and people coming to the United States to seek asylum or to reunify with family members, we don't necessarily care that they're corrupt countries, that there's violence, that there's a lack of economic opportunities. And those issues aren't issues that will be resolved within a presidential term. Those are issues that will take years, if not decades, or generations to be improved. So it's really not a winning strategy, I would say, to really go back to the root causes conversation, because those are just lingering issues in these countries.
We saw a bipartisan immigration bill come together earlier this year in Congress and then quickly fall apart after Trump said he wanted to have this as a live election issue. What do you think the chances are, and what could potentially be a divided Washington next year for a bill like this, not solving the root issues, but at least taking a first pass at an issue that Washington hasn't been able to address?
I have my hesitations and doubts if we'll get that close to putting a bipartisan bill back on the floor anytime soon. I think in a way that could have been a blueprint for going forward. I do think that the proposals and the conversation that was started back in February is kind of the foundation on which conversations can be and should be focused on going forward. The bill had not only policy proposals that could help to alleviate some of the pressure that the border has been experiencing over the last years, but there were also some very operational things within the bill, including just going back to basics like revising the budgets and resource allocation for more border agents, patrol agents.